Hi, this is Paul from 3D Printing Store. Today's topic is 3D printer maintenance. This is a crucial part in looking after your 3D printer, because if you look after your 3D printer will look after you. There are no checks and sensors inside a 3D printer that will tell you when a nozzle is worn out or when a bearing needs replacement. All of these things need to be checked at certain intervals to make sure that they are working 100% and delivering the results that you need. This is why we have different intervals where we check different aspects of the printer. We usually have things that we check each month, and then we have things that we check once a year to make sure that they are running still in good condition and running adequately. Let's break these aspects down and we look at each one individually. First, we'll have a look at the hot end assembly. The hot end assembly is quite a complex assembly, so be careful when you make modifications or changes. Maybe contact your local 3D printer supplier first to make sure that you are doing the right thing. The two most common parts we replace on a 3D printer is the nozzle and the PTFE tube. That's if you don't have an all-metal heat break. When you are printing standard filaments like PLA and ABS, standard brass nozzles are 100%. They don't wear out very quickly and they deliver very, very good results. If you go to some of the exotic filaments like carbon-filled filaments or glow-in-the-dark filaments, they will more likely get clogged or get damaged by being rammed into the bed before the nozzle is worn out. So the chances that when you only print PLA that the nozzle will wear out is quite slim. Filaments that do wear out brass nozzles very quickly are carbon-filled filaments and glow-in-the-dark filaments. Fiber-filled filaments are extremely abrasive, like the PETG carbon-filled filament or the nylon carbon-filled filament from 3D Tech. If you print these with a brass nozzle, then you'll probably print a quarter of a roll and the nozzle is wasted. That's why we recommend a hardened steel nozzle for printing these very, very abrasive filaments. Another filament that is also relatively abrasive is glow-in-the-dark filaments due to the glow-in-the-dark crystals inside the filament. Something that's quite interesting is that wood filament is not that abrasive. You can use a normal brass nozzle for that. The only thing to look out for wood filament is to use a nozzle size of at least 0.5 millimeters or bigger. This will allow the wood particles to flow through the nozzle easily and not blocking the nozzle. How will you know when to replace your nozzle? The first thing that's noticed is that your print quality degrades when the nozzle is worn out. The second thing that you can do is extrude the filament in mid-air, and this will form a thin strand. Then you measure that strand and that will tell you approximately what's the extrusion width of that nozzle. We check the nozzle once a month to make sure that it's still in good working order and not worn out. It's not always that we replace it each month, but we check it at least once a month. When we check the nozzle, we always check the PTFE tube as well, because these two wear out at the same rate. The PTFE tube is a Teflon tube inside the heat break. It sits there like a liner. It helps the filament to easily flow through the heat break when it's being melted from solid to molten. Some filaments wear the PTFE tube out quicker than others. What's quite interesting is PETG wears the PTFE tube out quite quickly. Abrasive filaments is also hard on the PTFE tube. So in those cases, it's actually better recommended to use an all-metal heat break. Overheating of the hot end can also degrade the PTFE tube, so be sure to watch out for that. Next up is the extruder. The extruder only requires cleaning most of the time to ensure proper operation. In some cases, the filament leaves tiny bits of plastic inside the gears of the extruder drive gear, which can clog it up a bit, and that reduces the grip of the gear on the filament. So this plastic needs to be removed, usually with a small steel brush or something like that, to get out those plastic pieces out between the teeth of the gear. Then the bearings also need to be checked, and the tension of the extruder where it pushes on the filament also need to be checked to make sure that it is pushing properly. For Bowden extruders, the Bowden tube should also be checked. This is the tube between the extruder and the hot end where the extruder pushes the filament through. These tubes can also wear out, so how we check it is we unplug it from the extruder side and we push the filament through by hand. If the filament is pushed through easily, then this tube is still in working order. If there's a lot of friction, then it's better to replace the Bowden tube. The printing surface is another aspect that requires regular attention. As you print, the printing surface will wear out, or in a case where you're printing on glass, you will need to redo the coating that you put on top of the glass. There are a lot of printing surfaces on the market today. The most common one is a type of a sticker or a build tack where you print directly onto it. The most important thing is to make sure that this sticker or build tack is clean and there's no dust or dirt or oil on the sticker, because this will cause that the filament do not stick to the printing surface. To clean the sticker or the build tack, we use IPA. IPA is isopropyl alcohol, because this removes all the oil and dirt from the sticker or the build tack. In some cases you can use acetone as well, but acetone dissolves some of the build tacks, which also has ABS in it, and that's why it's not recommended. Other printing surfaces like glass or a metal sheet also requires the similar cleaning process. The only difference with these is that you need to recoat the surface of the glass or the steel with either something like hairspray or glue to allow the filament to adhere to the printing surface. We usually print on these surfaces about 5 times, and then we give it a proper clean, and then we recoat it with a fresh coat of hairspray or glue. The next thing we check is the linear system of the printer. This is the linear rails, the bearings, the V-wheels, or whichever system your printer uses. The 3 most common systems are linear bearings that run on a hardened chrome steel rod. The second one is V-wheels, and the third one is linear rails. Linear bearings need to be re-greased every month. This is done by removing the old grease with a paper towel and then adding new grease. The grease that we use is a silicone grease, and then you rub it onto the clean rod, and that will lubricate the bearing on the inside as well. The other thing about linear bearings is that the rubber seals, it's the scrapers that keep dirt from going into the bearings, they also wear out over time. So we will re-grease the bearings once a month, and then once a year we will replace the bearings. The rods are usually still fine, but then once a year we will replace the linear bearings. Nowadays, V-wheels are quite popular on 3D printers. V-wheels can actually work in a relatively dirty environment. They are quite robust to dust and dirt and things like that. But if they're not set up correctly, they do wear out quite quickly. So the process that we follow is, the first thing to check is that the preload on the wheels are not too high. So in other words, the tension between the 2 wheels that is set with the eccentric nut shouldn't be too high. If it's too high, then you'll notice that overnight it will form a small dimple on the wheel, and then when you move the gantry or the carriage one way or another, you'll feel a small dip. This is usually an indication that the preload is set too high. and that it should be reduced slightly. The other thing that it will cause is that over time you'll see the wheel itself, the nylon part, will wear out quite quickly. It pushes the nylon to the side on the wheel, and that will have a degrading effect on the system. Overall, V-wheels are quite robust. The 625 bearings inside the V-wheels are quite strong. So we check the wheels once a year. It's not always that we replace them each year, but it needs to be checked at least once a year. Another tip that we have is when we have a new printer or a new V-wheel system, then we take a little bit of the silicone grease and we rub it onto the surface where the wheel runs. So we put it on the aluminium surface where the wheel runs. This also helps to lubricate the wheel a little bit and reduces the wear and tear on the wheel, which makes the wheels last longer. Linear rails can last a very long time as long as they are kept clean and do not operate in a very dirty environment. These bearing blocks has grease nipples which need to be greased. We usually check them once a month. The grease nipple allows the grease to go inside the bearing and properly grease the whole bearing block. If the linear rail is operating in a relatively dirty environment, make sure to clean it regularly. The bearings does have scrapers, but if it's working in a dirty environment, then the scraper can only do that much, and the scrapers will also wear out a lot quicker. We check these bearings once a year to make sure that they are working 100%, and then if replacement is needed, if there's play on the bearing or something like that, then we replace the bearings. When you replace the bearings, make sure that you use the exact same brand and manufacturer, because the tolerance on these rails and bearings are crucial. And if you change the brand or the manufacturer, then the chances are quite good that the new bearings won't fit on the old rail. The next thing we check is the timing belts. Timing belts are quite robust. They do not require very, very accurate alignment, and they can take quite a lot of strain. So we check these once a year. The only thing that we check once a month is the tension of the belt. Should there be a change in that, then we can retension the belt, but make sure not to over tension it, because it will reduce the life of the belt. Something that should not be forgotten is the fans. The fans work also quite hard, and the fact of the matter is that should a fan stop working, then it will probably break something else on the printer as well. When a fan starts to make a noise, it means that it's starting to wear out. Most fans in 3D printers have sleeve bearings, and they do wear out quicker than the fans with ball bearings. A tip that we have is with a fan with a sleeve bearing, what you can do to reduce the noise is pull off the sticker on the fan and add a drop of oil to the sleeve bearing and put the sticker back. This will give the fan new life. We check the fans once a month and also clean them to make sure that they are working 100%. Last but not least is the electronics. We clean the electronics once a year by blowing it out with compressed air. This is to remove any dust buildup on the electronics. It's usually where the fans blow over the electronics where cooling happens, and to make sure that the cooling happens efficiently, it's important to remove all the excess dust that builds up in these areas and on the heat sinks. This will allow the heat to flow properly out to the environment. The second thing we check on the electronics is we check the connectors, especially where high current is flowing through the connectors. Over time, if you have a bad connection or a pin, or there's corrosion on the pins, then you will get pins that start to heat up when high current is flowing through them. So check all the connectors of the heated bed and of the hot end, as these components carry a lot of current through the connectors. As soon as you see that there are a connector that's showing signs of heat where it's starting to melt or it's starting to change color, then it's better to change the connector to make sure that it won't result in failure later on. If you follow these guidelines, you can look forward to a lot of good years of service on your 3D printer. If you have any comments or feedback, please leave a message below or visit us in store that one of our technicians can assist. We are there to help. Thanks for watching and see you next time.